Through Tier 1, the relationship between metal and military power completely changed how civilizations fought each other. Bronze weapons were expensive because you needed both tin and copper to make the alloy, so only rich elites could afford them. But then iron came along and broke that whole system. The Hittites and Assyrians figured out how to smelt iron, which was way more common than bronze materials, and suddenly cheap spearheads were everywhere. This meant rulers could arm huge peasant armies without going broke. Bronze Age battles had maybe a few hundred fighters, but Iron Age empires were throwing tens of thousands of soldiers at each other. Military formations turned regular soldiers into coordinated fighting machines. The Macedonian phalanx used these massive 18-foot pikes called sarissas that created a wall of iron points nobody could get through. Alexander the Great used this formation with cavalry charges to conquer everything from Greece to India. Rome took these ideas and made them even better with their legion system, breaking armies into smaller, flexible units that could adapt to different situations. They'd throw javelins to mess up enemy shields and formations, then rush in with short swords for close combat. It's basically the same idea as modern military units using radios and GPS to coordinate. The tech changes, but teamwork still wins battles. The composite bow was a game changer for mounted warfare. Groups like the Scythians, Huns, and Mongols built bows from layers of wood, horn, and sinew that could shoot through armor from distances foot soldiers couldn't touch. Combine that with skilled horsemanship and you've got mobile shooters who could attack, run away, and attack again before heavy infantry even got close. The ancient version of hit-and-run tactics. Siege warfare got serious once engineers developed mechanical weapons. Ballistas and catapults used twisted rope to launch heavy projectiles, while battering rams focused all their force on gates and walls. The Assyrians actually carved instructions into stone, showing their siege techniques. Ramps, towers, the whole process. They turned breaking into fortresses from a gamble into a step-by-step procedure, basically creating ancient instruction manuals. The English longbow proved that simple weapons with skilled users could wreck expensive military elites. At battles like Agincourt in 1415, English archers destroyed French knights despite their fancy armor and years of training. Longbows had better range and fired faster than crossbows, turning armored cavalry into easy targets. The catch was that longbows required years of practice to use effectively, but England invested in training regular people as archers, and it paid off big time. Tier 2 begins when gunpowder showed up in China, and eventually made its way to Europe, where it completely wrecked the whole castle defense system. Cannons could just blast through stone walls that had protected cities for centuries, forcing military architects to rethink everything. They came up with these star-shaped forts that could deflect cannonballs better and let defenders fire back from multiple angles. Warfare suddenly revolved around who had more artillery and how to use it, which was a huge shift from the age of swords and bows. The mid-1800s brought rifling and the Minié ball, which sounds minor, but absolutely wasn't. Rifling put spiral grooves inside gun barrels that made bullets spin and fly way farther and more accurately. Claude-Étienne Minié designed this cone-shaped bullet that expanded when fired, gripping those grooves perfectly. Soldiers could now hit targets from distances that would have been impossible before. The Crimean War and the American Civil War saw massive casualty spikes because tactics hadn't caught up. Generals were still ordering tight formations and frontal charges while riflemen picked them off from hundreds of yards away. Factories and transportation networks became weapons themselves. The Industrial Revolution brought interchangeable parts, meaning you could mass-produce rifles and cannons at incredible speeds. Railroads let armies move troops and supplies across countries in days instead of weeks. The telegraph meant commanders could communicate instantly instead of waiting for messengers on horseback. Prussia's General Moltke used railroad timetables like military strategy, coordinating troop movements to mobilize faster than anyone expected. Wars were being won by whoever had better logistics before soldiers even fired a shot. Automatic weapons created a colonial nightmare and then a European one. Richard Gatling invented his hand-cranked machine gun, and Hiram Maxim perfected the fully automatic version that could fire hundreds of rounds per minute. European powers used these against colonized peoples with older weapons, creating devastating death tolls. But when European armies turned these guns on each other in World War I, it created the trench warfare stalemate where attacking meant running into a wall of bullets. Tanks emerged as the answer to breaking that deadlock. Early models like Little Willie and the Mark I were slow, broke down constantly, and looked like metal boxes on treads. But they could cross trenches and survive machine gun fire. When combined with creeping barrages where artillery slowly moved forward while tanks and soldiers advanced behind the explosions, armies finally had a way to punch through defensive lines. Naval warfare transformed when ironclad ships proved wooden vessels were obsolete. The Monitor and Virginia battle showed two metal ships just bouncing cannonballs off each other. Steam power meant ships didn't need wind anymore, and new shell-firing guns could actually penetrate iron armor. Aircraft entered warfare through observation balloons that let armies spot enemy positions from above. World War I saw the first real combat planes, fighters shooting at each other and bombers dropping explosives. The ground wasn't the only battlefield anymore, opening up a completely new dimension that would reshape future conflicts. Tier 3 brings us carriers that completely changed naval warfare from floating gun platforms to mobile air bases. Early carriers like HMS Hermes and Ark Royal proved the concept, but the Battle of Midway in 1942 sealed the deal. Japanese and American fleets never even saw each other. Aircraft from carriers hundreds of miles apart decided the entire battle. Battleships with their massive guns became obsolete overnight because planes could strike from distances those guns couldn't touch. Naval power became about who controlled the air above the water. Submarines turned the ocean into a hunting ground, especially German U-boats that operated in wolf packs to attack Allied supply ships. The Allies fought back with sonar and depth charges, creating this underwater cat-and-mouse game. The Battle of the Atlantic was basically a technology race where each side kept developing new detection methods and countermeasures. Whoever controlled the sea lanes controlled supply lines, and supply lines often determined who won the war. Radar flipped the script on surprise attacks. Britain's chain home system could detect incoming German aircraft before they reached the coast, which sounds basic now but was groundbreaking then. You couldn't just show up unannounced anymore. Integrated air defense combined radar detection with fighter planes and command centers that plotted enemy movements in real time. It turned defense from individual units reacting to threats into a coordinated system that could predict and intercept attacks. Guided missiles made dogfighting way more complicated than just getting behind someone and shooting. Air-to-air and surface-to-air missiles meant combat happened at distances where pilots couldn't even see each other. When the Soviet S-75 shot down an American U-2 spy plane in 1960, it proved that flying high didn't make you safe anymore. Altitude wasn't immunity. Missiles could reach you anywhere. Stealth technology brought back the element of surprise. The F-117 Nighthawk used angular shapes and special coatings to absorb radar instead of reflecting it back. Ben Rich and the Skunk Works team figured out that if radar couldn't see you, you could strike first without warning. It's like having an invisibility cloak in a world where everyone else is scanning for threats. Anti-ship missiles like the Exocet changed naval strategy completely. During the Falklands War, Argentine forces used exocets to sink British ships, showing that small, fast missiles could threaten massive warships. Modern carrier-killer missiles and coastal defense systems create these zones where fleets can't operate safely anymore, forcing navies to rethink how they approach hostile coastlines. Airborne early warning systems like AWACS, submarine hunters like the P-3 and P-8, and satellites tied everything together across domains. Information from sensors gets passed to shooters in seconds, creating kill chains that work over distances you can't even see. Winning depends more on who detects the enemy first and shares that information faster than on who has the bigger ship or plane. Tier 4 is focused on cyber attacks that don't need bullets or bombs to cause chaos. They can shut down power grids, water systems, and hospitals without firing a single shot. That's what makes them terrifying. A well-executed hack can paralyze an entire country by hitting the infrastructure everyone depends on daily. Imagine waking up to no electricity, no running water, and hospitals unable to access patient records. One line of malicious code could trigger all of that. Stuxnet in 2010 proved cyber weapons could cause real physical damage when it destroyed Iranian nuclear centrifuges by making them spin out of control. NotPetya in 2017 showed how fast digital attacks spread. What started as a hit on Ukraine exploded globally, causing billions in economic damage to companies that had nothing to do with the original target. These weren't theoretical anymore. State-backed hacker groups called Advanced Persistent Threats started operating like military units, and the US formed Cyber Command to treat digital warfare as seriously as traditional combat. The targets that keep security experts up at night are power grids, financial networks, air traffic control systems, and satellite constellations. Hitting any of these creates cascading failures that ripple through society. SCADA systems control everything from water treatment to gas pipelines, and they're often running outdated software that's easier to hack than your phone. Supply chain attacks like the SolarWinds breach let hackers hide backdoors and trusted software updates, spreading across thousands of networks before anyone notices. When a missile hits a building, you know who fired it. When a cyber attack shuts down infrastructure, the attacker can hide behind proxies and false flags, making it perfect for gray zone warfare. Countries can slowly bleed their enemies without triggering open conflict because proving who did it takes months or years of investigation. Civilian casualties happen indirectly, but they're just as real. Medical devices get disabled, ambulances receive wrong directions, or gas pipeline safety systems malfunction. People die without anyone pulling a trigger. It's a nightmare scenario that most people don't think about until it happens. Defense involves air-gapping critical systems, physically disconnecting them from the internet, and zero-trust security where nothing gets automatic access. Quantum-resistant encryption is being developed because future quantum computers could crack current security. Resilient communication networks like Starlink offer backup systems when ground infrastructure fails. Cyber warfare changed the global power balance because it's cheap compared to traditional weapons. Smaller nations or proxy groups can inflict massive damage without needing aircraft carriers or tank divisions. A talented hacker team with government backing can threaten superpowers, making regional conflicts way more unpredictable than they used to be. Tier 5. We approach autonomous weapons that operate faster than humans can think, which sounds impressive until you realize mistakes happen at that same speed. When AI makes targeting decisions, errors don't just affect one target. They can cascade across entire battlefields before anyone realizes something went wrong. Loitering munitions like the Harop and Switchblade can find and destroy targets on their own, while experimental systems like the Loyal Wingman drone flies alongside piloted aircraft making split-second tactical choices. Project Maven kicked things off by using computer vision to identify targets in drone footage, showing that AI could handle surveillance tasks humans found overwhelming. Commercial tech advances made sensors cheap and small enough to pack serious computing power into disposable drones. Libya and Ukraine became testing grounds where autonomous systems showed up in real combat, not just military exercises. The tactical advantage is brutal. Swarms of cheap autonomous drones can overwhelm even sophisticated defenses through sheer numbers. Traditional air defense systems cost millions and can only track so many threats at once. Send 100 small autonomous drones and you saturate their sensors while barely denting your budget. It's like fighting a video game boss that spawns infinite minions. The ethical nightmare keeps UN delegates up at night. Lethal autonomous weapon systems debates focus on whether machines should decide who lives and dies. Human in the loop means a person approves each strike. Human on the loop means a person can override, but the system acts independently. Human out of the loop means the machine decides everything. Countries can't agree on where to draw that line. Countermeasures include electronic warfare that jams or spoofs autonomous systems, lasers that can shoot down small drones, and close-in weapon systems that create defensive walls of bullets. But this creates machine versus machine battles that escalate faster than human commanders can control. Reports of autonomous engagements show how quickly situations become unpredictable when AI calls the shots. The operational nightmare is hacked or malfunctioning autonomous weapons, turning on friendly forces or misidentifying civilians. In chaotic environments, telling combatants from civilians is already hard. Now imagine an AI making that choice in milliseconds based on incomplete data. Low-cost autonomy means smaller groups can field deadly force multipliers. You don't need a massive defense budget anymore, just enough money for commercial drones and some programming skills. That's democratizing warfare in ways that make conflicts way more unpredictable and dangerous. Tier 6 technologies don't just change how wars are fought, they change what war actually means. We're talking about systems that compress decision times to seconds, break through every existing defense, or even alter human biology. Hypersonic glide vehicles, quantum computers, directed energy weapons, bioenhancements, and advanced nanomaterials all fall into this category, and they're moving from science fiction to reality faster than anyone expected. Hypersonic weapons like China's DF-17 or Russia's Avangard fly at speeds over Mach 5 while maneuvering unpredictably, giving defenders minutes or seconds to respond instead of the hours traditional missiles allow. Early warning systems become almost useless, and the idea of assured retaliation, knowing you can strike back even if hit first, gets shaky. That instability makes everyone more trigger-happy because waiting could mean losing everything. Quantum computing threatens to break all current encryption, which would expose military communications, financial systems, and secure networks instantly. Imagine every password, every secure message, every classified file suddenly readable by whoever has a working quantum computer. Modern militaries would be paralyzed because their entire command structure depends on secure communications that quantum systems could crack in hours. Directed energy weapons like high-powered lasers and microwave systems engage targets at the speed of light, making traditional missile defense look slow. They can disable incoming threats or fry electronics across entire areas without firing a single bullet. It's non-kinetic warfare that leaves no visible damage but renders equipment useless. Bioenhancements and brain-machine interfaces push human limits by improving endurance, reaction times, or targeting ability. Soldiers could potentially operate longer, aim better, and process information faster than naturally possible. But this opens ethical nightmares about what we're willing to do to human bodies, and creates new arms races around who can enhance their troops the most. Nanomaterials could create self-healing armor, or microscale weapons too small for current detection systems. Space-based weapons raise the stakes even higher. Satellites that can inspect or destroy other satellites, kinetic weapons dropped from orbit, or interceptors that create debris fields threatening every satellite in that orbital zone. The real danger is combining these technologies. Quantum computing breaks encryption, hypersonic missiles launch with minutes of warning, and automated defense systems trigger responses before humans can intervene. You get cascade failures where each system's automated countermeasure triggers the next one, creating an uncontrollable escalation cycle. The US, China, and Russia are leading development through military R&D and programs like DARPA, with prototypes accelerating toward deployment. Nuclear weapons sit at the top because they're the only technology that can end civilization in an afternoon. Everything else on this list is dangerous, but nukes were literally designed to cause existential destruction on a scale nothing else can match. The Manhattan Project under Oppenheimer and Groves created the first atomic bombs, and Hiroshima and Nagasaki showed the world what they could do. The Cold War turned that into an arms race with intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and MIR-V technology that put multiple warheads on a single missile. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought us closer to nuclear war than most people realize. 13 days where the world held its breath, while Kennedy and Khrushchev decided humanity's fate. Systems like the Minuteman ICBM, Trident submarine missiles, and Russia's Borei-class subs created the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. If anyone launches, everyone dies, so nobody launches. Second strike capability, the ability to retaliate even after being hit first, keeps that balance intact, at least in theory. Strategic thinkers like George Kennan and Bernard Brodie figured out nuclear deterrence theory, while physicists like Edward Teller pushed thermonuclear weapons even more powerful than the original bombs. Space systems became crucial for making all this work. Spy satellites like Corona for reconnaissance, early warning satellites to detect launches, and GPS for precise targeting. Without space infrastructure, modern nuclear command and control would fall apart. Arms control treaties like the Non-Proliferation Treaty and START agreements slowed the arms race but didn't eliminate arsenals. As these treaties erode, the risk climbs back up. The scary part is how many ways this system can fail without anyone intending it. In 1983, Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov received alerts showing incoming American missiles, but correctly guessed it was a false alarm and didn't report it up the chain. He literally saved the world by trusting his gut over his computer screens. New technologies make everything less stable. Hypersonic weapons compress warning times, cyber attacks could interfere with early warning systems, and misattribution in the fog of crisis could trigger launches based on wrong information. When you've only got minutes to decide whether to end the world, the pressure to strike first before losing your arsenal becomes overwhelming. A regional nuclear exchange wouldn't stay regional. Even a limited nuclear war between smaller powers would kill millions immediately, but the real nightmare is nuclear winter. Smoke and debris blocking sunlight, collapsing global agriculture, and causing mass starvation across continents that weren't even involved in the conflict. The ecological and economic damage would be permanent in human timescales. Nuclear weapons still dominate military strategy because even a small arsenal creates absolute deterrence. State survival calculations make nuclear policy the ultimate backstop, and the most dangerous lever any leader can pull, and that's why it's level 7.